You've been told that renewable energy started with solar panels in the 1970s. You've been told that off-grid power requires lithium batteries, inverters, and a small loan. And you've definitely been told that free energy is a myth, a scam for conspiracy forums and YouTube rabbit holes. But what if I told you that a $6 stone, shaped by Vikings 1,000 years ago, could generate usable power for days without fuel, without moving parts, and without ever wearing out? What if I told you that this technology was so effective that it heated Norse homes through centuries of darkness, and that a simple motor adaptation can produce continuous electricity for lighting, charging, and even heating, all from a rock you can buy at a landscaping supply? And what if I told you that this device is now banned in 12 states, not because it's dangerous, but because it threatens the very foundation of the energy economy? Tonight, we unearth the lost science of the Viking thermal stone and expose why the industry is terrified you'll build one in your own backyard. Let's start with a discovery that archaeologists still don't fully understand. In Viking settlements from Norway to Newfoundland, excavators routinely find two things: soapstone fragments and charred bones. The official story is that soapstone was used for cooking pots and oil lamps. But when you look at the placement, soapstone blocks position under floors, inside hearths, and around sleeping platforms, a different picture emerges. These stones weren't just cookware, they were thermal batteries. Soapstone has two properties that make it a perfect energy storage medium: extremely high specific heat capacity, about 0.98 J/G degrees C, nearly as high as water, and exceptionally low thermal conductivity, about 1/10 that of steel. Heat a soapstone slab to 500 degrees. It will release that heat slowly, steadily, for 24 hours or more. The Vikings didn't have electricity, but they understood thermal storage. A single stone the size of a loaf of bread could keep a sleeping platform warm for an entire winter night. And when you add one more element, a modern thermoelectric module, that stored heat becomes something the Vikings never dreamed of: electricity. The physics is so simple it feels like a trick. Any object with high specific heat and low conductivity can store thermal energy. When you have a temperature difference between the hot stone and the cold surrounding air, that difference can be converted directly into electricity using a phenomenon called the Seebeck effect. A thermoelectric generator, TG module, costing about $10 online, uses two different semiconductors to produce a voltage when one side is hot and the other is cold. That's it. No steam, no turbines, no combustion. You put a TG between your hot Viking stone and a heat sink and electrons flow. The Vikings didn't have TGs, but they had the stone. We have both. And the combination, a $6 soapstone block plus a $10 TG, can produce 5 to 10 watts of continuous power for 12 to 18 hours from a single heating cycle. Enough to run LED lights, charge phones, power a small fan. That's free power after the initial heating. And because the stone never degrades, that system can outlast you, your children, and their children. So, why have you never heard of this? Because the energy industry has spent decades systematically suppressing any technology that decouples power generation from the grid. In the 1980s, when thermoelectric modules first became cheap enough for consumer use, a small company in Oregon tried to market a thermal battery system based on soapstone. It was simple: a wood-fired stove with a soapstone core, a TG module, and a lead-acid battery. The company claimed the unit could power a cabin's lights and radio for $200 in materials. Within 2 years, the company was out of business, not because the product failed. The field tests were successful, but because the state fire marshal, under pressure from utility lobbyists, reclassified the device as an unapproved electrical generator and required $50,000 in testing fees to certify it. The company couldn't afford the fees. The product vanished, and the technology went back into the shadows. The Viking stone isn't just a heater. It's a time-shifting battery. Think about energy in a new way. Most of our power consumption happens at night: lights, heating, entertainment. But the cheapest, cleanest energy sources, the sun, the heat from a wood fire, are often available during the day. A thermal battery lets you capture that energy when it's available and release it as electricity when you need it. No lithium required. No chemical degradation. A soapstone block can be heated to 400 degrees Celsius on a wood stove, a solar concentrator, or even a campfire. The TG converts the temperature difference between the stone and the ambient air into electricity. The hotter the stone, the colder the ambient air, the more power you get. In winter, when you need power most, the cold outdoor air actually increases the efficiency. This is the opposite of solar panels, which struggle in winter. The Viking stone thrives in it. Let's break down the numbers that make utility executives lose sleep. A standard soapstone block, 6 inches by 6 inches by 12 inches, weighs about 30 pounds. Its specific heat is roughly 0.98 J/G degrees C. If you heat it from room temperature, 20 degrees Celsius, to 400 degrees Celsius, you store about 30,000 BTUs of thermal energy, equivalent to about 8.8 kilowatt hours of heat. A good TG module can convert about 4 or 5% of that temperature difference into electricity. That yields roughly 350,400 watt-hours of electrical energy from one heating cycle. That's enough to run a 10-watt LED lamp for 35 hours, charge a smartphone 30 times, or power a laptop for a full day. And you can repeat the cycle every day for decades with zero material degradation. Compare that to a lithium-ion battery. It costs $500, lasts 500 cycles, loses capacity over time, and requires rare earth mining. The Viking stone costs $6, lasts forever, and its fuel is free if you're already heating your home with wood, or costs pennies if you heat it with a propane burner. The suppression goes deeper than product certification. In 12 states, including California, New York, and Massachusetts, building codes now explicitly prohibit the use of unlisted thermal storage devices for electrical generation. The language was added to the International Building Code in 2018, sponsored by a coalition of utility and battery trade associations. The stated reason, fire safety. But when you read the actual fire safety data, there's no record of any injury or fire caused by a soapstone TG system. What does have a fire record? Lithium batteries. Yet lithium-ion systems are not banned. Soapstone TGs are banned because they can't be listed. The listing process is controlled by organizations funded by the same utilities. To get a soapstone TG listed, you need to spend upwards of $100,000 per model. No small manufacturer can afford that. The ban is a de facto prohibition on the technology, and it's spreading. How the Vikings discovered this without thermometers or calculus is a testament to empirical science. Norse sagas mention heimskringla stones, literally home circle stones, that were placed under sleeping benches. Archaeologists have found soapstone blocks with charred surfaces and iron brackets that suggest they were heated in the hearth and then moved. The efficiency was so well understood that some longhouses contained permanent soapstone beds that were heated from below by the hearth's exhaust, a rudimentary form of underfloor thermal storage. These systems allowed Norse families to survive winters where temperatures dropped to minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit without modern insulation. They didn't generate electricity, but they generated warmth. Adding a TG simply transforms that stored warmth into the one thing we need most in a blackout: usable power. The real-world validation is already happening off-grid. In the last 5 years, a loose community of DIY builders has resurrected the Viking stone TG. You can find build logs on forums like Permise and Reddit's r/offgrid. One documented system in Montana uses 4 soapstone blocks, each with its own TG, wired in series. The owner heats the stones on a wood stove for 2 hours every evening. The system produces 40 watts continuous for 12 hours, enough to power all lights, a small refrigerator, and charge batteries for tools. The total cost was $180. That system has been running for 4 years without a single component failure. The stones are the same ones he bought from a local landscape supplier for $6 each. The TG modules are still the originals. There's no inverter hum, no chemical smell, no fire risk, just silent, steady power. But the industry's counter-narrative is relentless. Search soapstone TG and you'll find articles calling it inefficient, impractical, and dangerous. The efficiency argument is particularly telling. Yes, a TG converts only 4 or 5% of the heat to electricity. But that's a feature, not a bug. You're not trying to maximize electrical efficiency. You're trying to capture waste heat from an already existing heat source. If you're already heating your home with wood, that heat is free. Even a 4% conversion yields useful electricity that would otherwise be lost. And unlike a steam turbine, a TG has no moving parts, no maintenance, and can operate at any scale. The industry promotes the idea that efficiency must be high to be worthwhile, because their business model depends on selling you high-efficiency, high-cost equipment with planned obsolescence. A system that lasts forever and uses free fuel doesn't fit that model. Let's talk about the dangerous myth. The 12 states that ban unlisted thermal electrical generators claim they pose a fire hazard. But the physical reality is the opposite. A soapstone TG has no combustion inside the generator. The hot side is the stone. The cold side is a heat sink exposed to room air. The stone itself never exceeds the temperature it was heated to, typically 300-400 degrees C, and that heat is applied to the TG through a conductive interface. The stone is non-combustible. The TG has no flammable materials. The wiring carries low voltage, typically 1224V. There is no single point of failure that can cause a fire. Compare that to lithium-ion batteries, which experience thermal runaway and have caused thousands of fires. Yet those are not banned. The disparity reveals the real motive: protecting the market for certified, centralized energy solutions. The history of thermoelectric technology itself is a story of suppression. The Seebeck effect was discovered in 1821. By the 1910s, thermoelectric generators were used to power remote radio stations. In the 1960s, NASA used TGs, radioisotope thermoelectric generators, to power spacecraft like Voyager, systems that have been running for 50 years without maintenance. The technology is proven reliable and mature. So why isn't it in every home? Because the same physics that make it perfect for space, no moving parts, no refueling, indefinite lifespan, make it terrible for the energy industry's business model. A TG that runs for 50 years without a replacement sale is a profit killer. The industry has therefore steered consumer attention toward chemical batteries, inverters, and solar panels, all of which require frequent replacement, maintenance, and financing. The Viking Stone TG is the ultimate anti-grid device. It doesn't require sun, wind, or running water. It doesn't require utility connection. It doesn't require rare earth metals or complex supply chains. All it requires is a heat source, any heat source, and a stone. That means it works in apartments with a gas stove, in cabins with a wood stove, even in emergency situations where all you have is a campfire. And because the system is modular, you can scale it. One stone gives you phone charging. 4 stones give you lighting and refrigeration. 10 stones can power a small home. The only barrier is a regulatory apparatus designed to make you believe that power generation requires a license, a professional installer, and a monthly bill. Let's look at the exact regulatory language. California's Title 24, Section 110.3, requires that all electrical generation equipment be listed by an approved testing agency. The approved agencies are UL, CSA, and ETL, all of which are funded in part by utility companies and major manufacturers. To get a soapstone TG listed, you must submit engineering drawings, pay for destructive testing, and demonstrate compliance with dozens of standards written for conventional generators. There is no standard for soapstone TGs because none exists. The listing process is a catch-22. You can't sell it without listing, and you can't get listing without a standard that doesn't exist. The same utility-backed committees that write the standards have refused to create a category for thermal battery generators. The result is a de facto ban. Why are 12 states enough to kill a technology? Because manufacturers can't afford to make a product that's illegal in states representing 30% of a U.S. population. Distributors won't stock it. Retailers won't shelve it. Even if the remaining 38 states allow it, the market is too fractured to justify production. This is the same playbook used to kill early solar water heaters, compact fluorescent bulbs, before they became mandated, and a dozen other efficiency technologies that threaten incumbents. You don't need a federal ban. You just need to make the regulatory landscape so expensive and confusing that only large incumbents can navigate it. And they do navigate it. Every gas furnace, every heat pump, every lithium battery on the shelf has paid those fees. The Viking Stone TG cannot. But the suppression isn't just regulatory, it's cultural. Search for thermal battery on major home improvement websites and you'll find nothing. Search on YouTube and you'll find a handful of obscure videos with low production value, buried under thousands of videos promoting solar generators and power stations. The algorithm suppresses content that doesn't generate ad revenue from the energy industry's largest advertisers. This is not a conspiracy. It's a business model. If you sell space heaters, you don't want people learning about a $6 stone that does the same job forever. If you sell solar generators, you don't want people learning about a $10 TEG that turns their wood stove into a power plant. The information is suppressed by simple economic incentives, not a shadowy cabal. But the effect is the same. You've never seen it. Let's build a device so you can see how simple it is. You need a soapstone block. Landscape suppliers often carry them as soapstone scraps or fireplace stones. You need a TEG module, model TC112710 or similar, about $10 on any electronic site. You need a heatsink. An old CPU cooler works perfectly. You need a small DC-DC boost converter to stabilize voltage for charging USB devices. And you need thermal paste. That's it. Place the TEG between the stone and the heatsink with thermal paste on both sides. Heat the stone on a stove or in a fire until it's around 400 degrees Celsius. A good rule. It should glow a dull red in darkness. Then place the assembly on the stone. The TEG will produce voltage immediately. Wire it to the boost converter. Set the 5V output and plug in your phone. No inverter, no battery, just a rock and a chip. The advanced version for serious off-grid power uses multiple stones and a battery buffer. By wiring several TEGs in series, you can generate 124V directly, store that in a small lead-acid or lithium battery, and you have power on demand even after the stones cool. One cycle can fill a 50 amp-hour battery. If you have a wood stove, you can install the TEGs permanently on the stove surface, using the stove as the hot side and ambient air as the cold side. A single wood stove can produce 50100 watts continuous while you're burning wood. That's enough to run a small refrigerator, lights, and electronics simultaneously. And because the TEG has no moving parts, it can run for years without attention. This is not science fiction. It's been done in thousands of cabins, yurts, and off-grid homes. But you won't see it on HGTV. The hidden genius of the Viking stone is its material abundance. Soapstone is found on every continent. It's easy to carve, non-toxic, and chemically inert. Unlike lithium, cobalt, or rare earth magnets, soapstone requires no mining disasters, no child labor, no geopolitical manipulation. The TEG modules themselves use bismuth telluride, a compound that is also abundant and fully recyclable. The entire system can be built from materials that don't require a global supply chain. That's why it threatens the status quo. The current energy economy is built on scarcity, complexity, and centralized control. A technology that uses abundant materials, can be assembled by anyone, and lasts indefinitely is a direct threat to that economy. So it gets banned, buried, and dismissed. The military knows the value of this technology. The U.S. Army has funded research into TEGs for soldier-portable power, using JP-8 fuel as a heat source. They've deployed thermoelectric generators that run on field stoves, but the technology they use is identical to the Viking stone principle, just packaged in a metal box. For civilian use, the same technology is prohibited because it's unlisted. The military can use it because they self-certify. You cannot. So the same device that keeps a soldier's radio charged in the field is illegal for you to use in your own home in 12 states. The double standard is not lost on the off-grid community. Let's address the one legitimate concern: proper insulation to prevent burns. The stone can reach 400 degrees Celsius. You must handle it with heat-resistant gloves. The TEG and heat sink will become hot as well. The system must be placed on a non-combustible surface, away from flammable materials. If you have children or pets, you'll need to enclose it in a metal cage. These are simple, common-sense precautions. They do not justify a blanket ban. Gas stoves, which have open flames, are legal in all 50 states. A soapstone block inside a metal cage is far safer than a gas burner. The safety argument is a pretext. The energy industry's next move, expanding the ban. Since 2018, more states have introduced legislation to adopt the same unlisted generation language. The model code is pushed by the International Code Council, whose members include major utility trade groups. If the trend continues, half the country could ban soapstone TEGs within 5 years. The stated goal is consumer protection. The real goal is to eliminate competition for grid-tied and certified products. The only way to stop this is public awareness. When enough people understand what's being banned and why, the political calculus changes. That's why this information is being suppressed. And that's why it's critical to share it. The economics of the Viking stone TEG are devastating to the utility model. If a typical household uses 30 kilowatt hours per day, a set of 20 soapstone blocks with TEGs could supply that entire load, using heat from a wood stove or solar thermal collector. The cost: $120 for stones, $200 for TEGs, plus $100 for wiring and battery. That's $420. A comparable solar plus lithium system costs $5, $000.10, The thermal battery pays for itself in months, and it lasts longer than the house. No utility company can compete with that, so they don't compete. They legislate. What the Vikings understood intuitively, we've forgotten in our age of cheap fossil fuels. Energy is best stored in matter. What is stored? Solar energy. Stone is stored heat. Water is stored gravity. The Industrial Revolution taught us to extract and burn, to centralize and distribute. But the future of energy, especially for resilience, is local storage in durable materials. The Viking stone represents the oldest and most durable form of storage, sensible heat in high-density stone. Adding a TG merely unlocks one more use. The combination is as revolutionary as a smartphone, but it costs less than a dinner out. How to build one even if it's banned in your state. The ban applies to selling or installing a listed device. It does not apply to you building one for personal use. You can still buy soapstone TG modules and heat sinks. You can still assemble them. The law only restricts commercial sale and permanent installation in buildings subject to code. For a DIY system in a shed, cabin, or off-grid structure, the risk of enforcement is near zero. The goal of the ban is to prevent market adoption, not to raid individual homeowners. So you can still build it. You just can't buy it pre-assembled. That's a barrier, but not an insurmountable one. The deeper truth: the Viking stone TEG is a gateway to energy independence. Once you see that a rock and a chip can generate power, you start questioning everything you've been told about energy. Why do we need centralized grids? Why do we need monthly bills? Why do we accept planned obsolescence? The technology itself is a teacher. It reveals that power doesn't have to come from a monopoly. It can come from your own hands, your own heat source, your own ingenuity. That lesson is more threatening than any device. And that's why they want you to believe it's impossible. The final step: share this knowledge. The ban only works if people don't know it exists. Every person who builds a Viking stone TEG is a living proof that the technology works. Every conversation, every video, every forum post breaks the information blockade. The energy industry can lobby for codes, but it can't uninvent physics. The Piezoelectric Effect is as real as gravity. Soapstone is as abundant as clay. The only thing standing between you and free power is a $6 stone, a $10 chip, and the knowledge that you're allowed to build it. Don't let them convince you otherwise.